I started as an SVP and I was running our largest account at the time. Why? Well, I was the first agency person he had hired. I was one of the oldest people, so I had work and lived experience. And so I had already, in my lifetime, already hired and terminated people. I had had hard discussions. I had done all of that stuff. I had already been an informal mentor. Like I said, I'm always a coach for people, champion. And so as I started to get used to my role at Vayner, he had me doing other things. So on my year anniversary, which we call Vaynerversary, I went to him and I said, you know what, thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't want to do advertising anymore. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I only care about the people here. I care about the heartbeat. The heartbeat is the culture. That's that. And the culture is made up of these micro moments that individuals have day in, day out, minute by minute, minute by minute. And so he said, all right, I need you to do this job for 18 more months. And I really think I said, I'll give you 6 months. He doesn't remember that. But I did. I found my backfill and I closed everything down and I resigned.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jay Scherr, host of Business Minds Coffee Chat, where you get a captivating look inside the minds of game changers, risk takers, and visionaries who turn ideas into breakthroughs that shake up the world. Our mission is to give you fresh ways to think that spark growth in your business and life so you can make a mark that lasts. Let's dive right in. I thought just to kick off the conversation, I would love it if you would share with all of us what your favorite thing is about yourself.
What a question. I love that. Okay, you know what? I have a couple.
Okay.
I will tell you that, which is pretty outstanding. And I hope everyone that's listening has at least one or two. I really like the fact that I constantly have a song in my head. It can be from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and more. It's just there.
Okay.
And it's just random. It's not like I'm listening to music right now. It's just there. So I love that. And I like my smile a lot.
That's fantastic. Okay, so that you always have a song in your head and that you love your smile. Two great things to love about yourself. So let's talk about the song in your head for a moment. So ironically, just as a side note, I recently interviewed an author and a classical musician. She's written a fabulous book. She has some classical music programs in New York City, and we talked about the power of music and how music can affect our mood. It can affect our the way we think and expand curiosity as well. So with that in mind, you mentioned lots of different types of songs. Why are songs so important to you? And when you do hear songs in your head, how do they affect how you show up and affect your mood?
Yeah. I can say I grew up in a musical household, as in music was always on. We're not musicians, but music was always on. And my dad, to this day, is always humming or singing out loud. And I am too. It's something I'm very aware of at work, at play, when I'm just sitting here and having to get some work done. I will say, for the most part, it makes me feel light. It makes me feel jolly. And, and when music is in my head, I'm not thinking of anything else. That's just what's happening. So there are no limiting beliefs or imposter syndromes that can creep in there at that moment. So I'll take that any day. That's a great thing. And it's fascinating because I don't know why they come into my head. I really don't. There's no reason that, the other day, for example, I was singing Juice Newton of all things, and now I'm forgetting the name of the song, but Juice Newton, that was in the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like Olivia Newton-John, all kinds of, the other day I was seeing Bad Company, Not Feel Like Making Love, the other one. Now I can't think of it. See, if it's not there, it's not there.
Right.
So it's random. And I will say, and I write about this in the book, there's a moment in the book where I was in an incredibly challenging situation in Outward Bound. And it was snowing, and I had a very, very heavy pack on and whatnot. And I was filled with kind of self-sabotaging thoughts. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to break my leg. I wanted to go home
Mm-hmm.
day one. And the instructor comes down to me, and she looks at me. It's snowing, it's sleeting. She looks at me under that kind of like yellow slicker I had on. And she goes, "What's going on in your head?" And I said, "Well, I'm singing that song. Head like a hole, black as your soul. I'd rather die than give you control. 9 Inch Nails." That's what I said. She looks at me and she goes, "You better get another song in your head." And so from that day on, I'm very aware most of the time of my moods, sometimes when songs are in my head. So that was a very negative, I would say angry song, and I was having a very negative experience with myself.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
it's deep, right?
it. It is, which we'll explore that a little bit further. But keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt your thought.
No. And so a lot of times, if I catch myself, whatever it is I'm singing, I can feel my energy, and most of the time, it's pretty jolly. I'm very lucky, and I wake up happy. I'm one of those people that wakes up happy, even though I might be tired. And I just did the Strength Finders test, and I got the results back, and positivity was the first one.
Mm.
And the coach was describing to me, like, "You must wake up happy." I'm like, "Yeah, I wake up basically happy."
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would say I am certainly more of an optimist, and I think most people who see me would
Mhm.
say, "Well, you just seem like you're happy and optimistic all the time." And I am a lot of the time. But what they don't see is the work that I do to maintain that type of mindset, because I'm inundated with the same types of information, what's happening in the news and the world and all the things that are coming at us. But I'm very intentional about what I actually allow in. So the information that I read, the type of books, the music that I listen to, conversations that I have, all those sorts of things, I really do have to work on every day, because otherwise it's too easy to fall into that trap of, to where what you had brought up before, those limiting beliefs, the negative self-talk, the "I can't do this, I'm not good enough for that," all that stuff. So
Oh,
I work really hard to try to work through that as best as I can, and remind myself that, you know what, Jay, you're okay. You're
you're
okay.
okay. Yeah, you're more than okay. And I like what you said, because yes, we have to do the work. Whatever the work is for you or for that person or for myself, it's going to look differently based on our lived experience. Yet
Absolutely.
it has to happen. Otherwise, to your point, if I filled my head with news before I went to bed, I would have a very different experience in the morning. I know that, and so I choose not to.
Good for you. So you did mention the Outward Bound Wilderness Leadership Program that you participated in. Before we talk about that, because I do want to touch on that for a moment, because I think it's important and it helps to give us a bit of context around who you are today, what you learned through that experience. But before that, though, when we talk about beliefs, and you had mentioned about limiting beliefs, and people who are listening to this right now, I'm sure, can relate to that. What is something that you believed about yourself early in life that you found out later wasn't true?
Oh, easy peasy. I thought I was dumb, literally dumb.
Why?
I um, I was a really poor student at a very early age. And back in my day, they did those Rorschach tests and the ERB tests and whatever other tests. And turns out, so I'm pretty wildly dyslexic. And again, this is in the 80s. They didn't really have a lot of, I didn't know, or my parents didn't know of a lot of help for that. And so reading out loud is very difficult for me. Spelling is very difficult for me. Memory of things are very difficult for me unless I write them down. Spatial relationships, how to, look at a jigsaw puzzle, all the pieces and put those together isn't something that comes naturally to me. What comes naturally to me are much more people skills, much more kind of the EQ skills. And so I told myself, not only did my grades tell me that, and some teachers echoed that, my SAT scores that I took 3 times said that too. I held myself back from opportunities for a very long time because that was the talk track up here. You're dumb. You're dumb. You're just not going to get it. You're just not smart enough. And, I compared myself, which, compare despair, compare is a thief of all joy. And for a very long time, until I would say I finally kind of voiced this limiting belief in a therapy session. I was about 35 or 36. So a very long time I carried that. And like I said, it held me back. I held myself back from opportunities and options. And I can tell you right now, looking back, I was in some pretty yucky and destructive relationships. And I think I felt like I deserved that on some level.
So and I want to stay back in time here, but I do want to pull the timeline forward for just a moment, since you, at 35 or 36 years old, you were able to voice this in therapy. So what did you learn? So obviously a mirror was held up, but what did you learn about yourself through that therapy session? And can you give us a sense of how long it took you to either reframe that story that you were telling yourself or find another way to work through that? How long did that take?
So I was seeing a somatic therapist at the time.
Okay.
Really great. So, really how the emotions affect our body and what emotions we keep in our body. A lot of PTSD work you do. And so, and we also did tapping, which was great. I didn't know, listen, I just went to a therapist. I was desperate. I didn't know that I would get all of this out of it. And she taught me how to replace the I am dumb, I'm just not smart enough, with a few different, I would say, mantras that still stick with me. They're just lines. I am worthy and I am enough. And to this day, if I am sinking, if I am plummeting, if I am feeling bad, I will tap out, I am worthy. And I put it, this is the great thing about music, I put it to a song, one of my favorite songs by a band called Block Party.
Okay.
So when the song comes on, and I save it for myself, it's not a song I play for others, I save it for myself. It's a very, sacred, almost spiritual moment for me, where the music starts and I just go, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. So to answer the question, I would say, I want to say it took me 30 days. It probably took me a few years to really, really integrate it into my system. But I had to change other things, Jay. I couldn't just be like, oh, I am worthy, and then be in bad relationships.
Sure.
I couldn't do that to myself. So I had to free myself up from things that were imprisoning me, that I put myself into. And then everything started to come together.
Yeah, this is truly fascinating. So for all of you that are watching and listening right now, just please remember this. If you take away anything from this first part of our conversation, it is this, that you do not have to do this alone. We all have that self-talk. we've all been through different things, sometimes more severe than others, but there's help available. And help
Yes.
comes in lots of different shapes and sizes and forms. But never be afraid to ask for help.
Yes.
There's no shame in it.
There's no shame. And I will say, you will be surprised at how many people will raise their hand to want to help you. The support system that you have, you may not even think that person cares about you. And, it's funny, like, I don't remember the game show it was, but it was always like phone a friend. You want a lifeline. Yes, you need a lifeline. You need a buoy to swim to sometimes.
Absolutely. So let's go back a little bit then, back to the Outward Bound Wilderness Leadership Program. So you're 19 years old, is what I understand. You're in this program. It's a 93-day program. That's a long program.
Long.
Day one, though, is what you were talking about, right? Where you're like, this is not good. But tell us first of all, why did you choose to go into a program of that nature? And what were you looking for at that stage in life at 19? What was going on in your life that you said, this is something I really feel I need to do, and this is why it's so important to me?
Yeah, I mean, it's a stunning question because it really has a response. I left college after my sophomore year, so I was 19. I had gotten into a lot of trouble, big mess with, bad decisions, bad boys, bad drugs, and I was done. I was done. I was not going to school to go to school. I was going to school to party. And I knew that. And then, a really bad negative event happened in my life at school with a young man, and I left. And when I got back home to Santa Fe, where I'm from, after I probably unwound a little bit, I told my parents I needed to find the longest wilderness course I possibly could find because I needed to get my butt kicked. And that is quote unquote. I knew, and I don't know how I knew, but I knew that I wasn't going to go down that path. My life wasn't supposed to be spent at a rehab. My life wasn't supposed to be spent doing the things I had been doing to hurt myself, to sabotage myself, or to have fun and party, whatever you want to call it. So I chose the longest program I could find, which was 93 days. And, sure, they send you information, pamphlets about it, but you don't know what you're into until you actually get there. And the amazing thing, when I think back on this, I was so desperate to get out of the place I was in. I could have gotten college credit for that. And it didn't even dawn on me to get a semester's worth of credit. It didn't even dawn on me. So when I finally went back to college, I was short some credits to be an actual, sophomore. And I had to, make that up and then, plow through. I ended up graduating when I was 28. But I needed to get away from anything that was going to be a temptation to me, anything that was going to contribute to me treating myself poorly. Really. And so getting out of Dodge was the best thing I could have done. The hardest thing and the best thing.
So tell me what you took away from that experience that has transformed you as a leader and as a human being.
So it's a wilderness leadership course. So I knew I would be learning how to lead teams, whether or not in the wilderness or in a classroom or in a boardroom. I knew that would be an output of it. I also knew that I would learn servant leadership. Now, I call it empathetic leadership today for obvious reasons, but I would learn all of the tenets of servant leadership within a framework of emotional intelligence. These are the things I knew. That was it. And what I can tell you is by making it past day 1, day 2, day 3, and making it into day 18, where we finally got a hot shower and got real food, even those 18 days, I had started to transform. I had started to shed some baggage. I was lighter. I was still definitely numb. I was still definitely in some kind of like haze. I'll say that. But I made it through those first 18 days. And we started at 11,000 feet. We ended at probably 14,000, 15,000 feet of those 18 days. So yeah, I worked my butt off. And I saw myself doing things physically that I thought, what the heck? I can't do that. I can't climb up a mountain like that. And that was just the first 18 days. So I took away the fact that I knew that I'm a servant leader. I am here. As a matter of fact, my mission is to be of joyful service. I know that. I didn't know the term emotional intelligence. I just knew that I carried a different type of knowing that wasn't something that you were graded on in school. I was aware of that. I was aware of that even in high school, but I didn't. What can you do? What could I do about it? No. Really,
Sure.
I learn differently. I promise you, I do. I'm reciting, Jim Morrison. This is the end, and there's something to that poem, right? And they were like, no, it's not Yeats. I mean,
Close.
yeah, close, right? Yeah. So I learned to be much more confident in myself, and physically, I grew. I grew confidence that I just didn't know I had inside of myself, to where I was captaining down class 5 rapids in the Grand Canyon, lead climbing in Joshua Tree, doing things that I didn't know I could do. And that was really, really cool to see myself complete something that was very hard.
That's an amazing experience. Did it change relationships that you had with others? Did it change at all your relationship with your own parents?
It's a good question. I don't know if it changed my relationships with my parents, but because this was 1991, it was snail mail. You had to use a calling card on a payphone to phone people up during your, 1 or 2 day break. And so my relationships with people started to take on mail. They'd send me letters with collages and this and that. And I would send, a fun leaf I found and dried in my book. And then, so I think that, I have never thought about this, but I think that actually changed the way we were connecting, because these were still my buddies that I had done drugs with and stuff like that, but it changed the nature, I think, of our relationship. And I would probably say I was so raw and real. I mean, I'm just out there in nature. There's no books. There's no toilet paper. There's, you're living. So I could only be me. And what I realized, and I don't know when I got this realization, is it's a lot easier for me to be me than to be someone else or try to be someone else. And I didn't know that before. I didn't know that.
What is fascinating to me about that, and something that you said about being me, is an experience like that and trying to create experiences like that just absolutely strip everything away, right? There's nothing left but you, your core, the who you are, right? Trying to get to that place. That can be very, not only can it be scary at times, but it can be very telling. And I know that in doing my research that you also are very spiritual, that you have followed different or studied different religious beliefs. And I think Buddhism was one of those that you had studied and possibly practiced. I don't know. But I did as well. I went down a path of studying Buddhism for several years. And I found through that experience that it really made me look so much deeper within myself and trying to strip away all of the stuff, the armor, the titles, all the different things that I was chasing that was going on in my life to really better understand who I am.
Yeah.
Who am I really?
Yeah.
Did you find that through that
Yeah.
experience and also through your spiritual journeys?
Oh, yeah. So that was at 19, and I don't think I ever stopped. I haven't stopped
Okay.
since then. So that was the first time that I was aware, I was conscious that I was stripping away things. Now, I hadn't gone into spiritual studies at that point. I was raised Jewish, and here I am on Outward Bound and really believing in the universe and the nature and the trees. I mean, that's a big part of my belief. And but I hadn't read any Buddhist philosophy at that point or teaching, and I didn't know about acceptance. I didn't know that accepting that suffering is part of the world, part of our existence, was even a thing until I finally did. And then it was like, oh, got it. So I need to learn how to accept life on life's terms. And then things opened up. And that was throughout my 20s. Yeah, that was in my 20s when I was doing the School of Life. I didn't go back to school until I was 27. So that is what I did. I was living in San Francisco at that time, which is a great place to be young and free. And that's what happened there.
Beautiful. So I mentioned at the beginning when I was going through your bio, and of course I just scratched the surface, right? But basically a 20 plus year career up to this point in advertising and leadership. And tell me how did you get into that field? And was that something that you had really envisioned for yourself? And then let's, as you maybe give us a synopsis of how you got into it, let's then talk about how you end up where you are today. And I've got a few questions about that for you that are just sitting on the top of my mind.
Okay. So it is like puzzle pieces. I knew at a very young age that while I wasn't book smart, I had a human smart. I didn't realize it was called intuition, but I knew I could kind of pick up on things, pick up on other people. Other people's feelings and whatnot. And I think I started to study humans at a very young age, looking back now, not knowing that, of course. So I'm in San Francisco. It's the .com boom, 1998, the first one. And I had just graduated from getting my BA in transpersonal psychology. And I was in the right place at the right time. I was managing a boutique grocery store in the Castro, way before Whole Foods. This is way before Google. This is way before, obviously, Facebook. And there was a repeat customer that kept on coming in. And one day he said, "I think you would be a really great project manager." I'm like, "What the heck is that?" And he explained it. And I said, "Well, I mean, I'm good with humans." So I was managing this little store. And so the next thing I knew, I was driving my little beater Saab down to Palo Alto and working at my first internet.com, startup. I probably went through 3 because they would rise, they would fall, they would rise, they would fall. That was all in digital, this world of digital and content. And we called it the internet. It wasn't called anything specific at that time. It wasn't called content either. a girlfriend and I, after 9/11, we both got laid off. We said to each other, well, what are we going to do? And we both decided we should start an outdoor adventure company, teaching surfing, teaching rock climbing, teaching mountaineering, I'd played tennis for so long, teaching tennis. And so we did. And it was called Girls Adventure Out. And I am a natural player, coach, cheerleader. I believe in cheering for people. I really do. Whether or not you're an underdog, an overachiever, it doesn't matter to me who you are. Just, I am going to be there to say to you, you got this. You got this. So I taught surfing in the cold, SF water, Pacific water, for 5 years with a killer tan, neck up, wrist down. And even on the east coast of Florida, San Sebastian stuff, Ron John's. We should get Ron John to sponsor this episode, actually.
There you go.
There you go. And I just loved it. I just loved it. And I should say, coming out of Outward Bound, I know I'm zigging and zagging a little bit. I thought I was going to be a paramedic. I thought, okay, I'll be an EMT, because now I know wilderness first aid and backcountry survival and all of that. And I thought maybe I'd do that. Then I realized I'm not really good with blood. I get real squirmish.
Okay.
So then I thought, you know what? I want to be a psychotherapist. I do. I really want to be in the act and the art of walking with someone on their journey. This was at a young age, 19, 20, 21. Nonetheless, we sold the surf company, and I needed a job, and I went to a temp agency at the time. It was 2005. And they placed me at a digital advertising company. I could tell you right now, I had no idea what comms was, what marketing was. I had no idea how anything got put up on this thing called a computer, because I only worked in digital. I didn't work in print or anything. And that was where it all kicked off. So it's 2005. I started at an Omnicom agency. I was a project manager and then an account director. And then one day, the chief strategic officer came over to me and he said, you know how to build personas, right? And I was like, yeah, I think so. It's just human behavior. He said, you're a strategist. And he plucked me over here and he took me to his team. And then I lived the rest of my life in advertising as a strategist, a digital strategist, a creative strategist. And that was a sweet spot for me. That was a sweet spot because it's all about humans, watching humans, figuring out what is it that makes them tick, what makes them talk, what makes them buy, what makes them loyal, all of that stuff. And then it's creative. And so I really loved that work for a very long time.
So that work took you from California, and you actually lived in other areas as well. Yeah. You went to Europe. Yes,
the job. My last agency that I worked at in San Francisco was called JWT, J. Walter Thompson, and I got a phone call one day, and the president of the San Francisco office that I was in said, you have a phone call here from the president of JWT London. And he said, I heard we need someone with your skill set, in a very posh accent, very, very posh. Now, little Claude would have said, what skill sets are those? But big Claude said, okay, well, how soon do you need me? And he said 2 weeks. And I was like, all right. And I put everything into storage, and away I went. So I went there for 2 years. I came back to San Francisco for a year, and then I got hired again in London at another agency. So 4 years in London, and loved every minute of it. I originally went over there not knowing anyone. Yes, of course, we speak the same language. It is a very different culture. And I really spent, I would say, the first 3 months with myself in a big way, back to Outward Bound, right? That was 3 months. And I was able at that point in my life, I already knew the I am worthy chant. I had already done that.
Right.
And I had enough confidence that, okay, I'm not dumb because they just hired me to do this job that no one's doing. You know, I could put two and two together with as much humility as I could. And that was that. I traveled, I did some great work. I met phenomenal people that I'm still very close to. I had no desire to move back to the States. And then I met Gary Vaynerchuk, my boss, my CEO, and we started to chat, and he said, I need you in New York. And then I moved to New York, and I started at Vayner May 8th of 2014. And I'm still there.
So, for the maybe one or two people who aren't familiar with Gary's name,
Mm-hmm.
how would you describe him as a human being and as a leader? We see things, right? We see him. He's prolific, obviously, on social and everywhere else for that matter. How do you, because you're so close, how do you describe him to other people?
Yeah, he is as real as you get. He is probably one of the kindest people I've ever known, generous to the nth degree. He is so gifted in knowing people and understanding people. And I don't want to say the plight of the human race, but he really understands what is beneath the surface. He can feel it. He knows where fear exists. He knows where someone is, in their superpower. He is able to read people like no one I've ever met. What I love about Gary is he speaks the truth, and he is proud of that truth. And I believe him as well. And I would say, yes, he's a phenomenal salesperson, and he's a great entrepreneur. He's a phenomenal boss and friend. And what you see is what you get. So sometimes people say, you work with Gary? Like, you're so different. Well, we're not really that different. People know him on social as Gary V, and he's loud. He's not loud in person. He's not. He's real. He's real, and he's human, just like us. And I appreciate that. Working for someone as special and gifted as him, he still will say, and I've had to work on this vulnerability in my life. And I really appreciate that.
As do I. Now, based on the way that you've described yourself and many of the innate gifts and talents that you have in understanding people, reading people, it sounds like there's actually a perfect synergy there.
Yes.
Because it's almost like you're, in some ways, maybe cut from a very similar cloth. Clearly, there's differences as well, but you've got those common attributes. Now, often you find in a leadership capacity as you're in right now, that maybe a CEO has certain gaps that another leadership person is able to fill, and vice versa. So do you find that within your relationship as well, that there are strengths that you have that make up for perhaps some weaknesses or improvement areas with others?
Yes. I mean, I think we all have that. No one is perfect and has it all together. Gary and I definitely operate with emotional intelligence, and I would specifically say empathy. We're very, very high empath. He and I have actually had to work on very similar challenges and vulnerabilities in our own personalities because we are such empaths. We want people to be happy. We want people to stay at this company forever. We want because it's good. And that in the past had gotten us into a place of creating entitlement and coddling people rather than being really honest with them. So just to say that, we've had to really, in our own journeys, work on that. And he's a visionary. And I'm not going to necessarily say I'm a visionary. That's not how I think about life. That's not how I'm not looking around that next corner. I'm not like that. He's very entrepreneurial. I am definitely grounded in the here and the now and very attuned to people's emotions. That's what I'll say. So that's
So,
probably, yeah.
yeah, okay, so let me get my bearings straight here, because as you were sharing that, it brought up a couple of things, but I want to stay true to your title today, which is Chief Heart Officer. Now, when you first started with the company, that was not necessarily your role. So that role was created. Can you share with us what that means to you and what it means to the others within your organization?
Yep. So I'll tell you what Gary would say it
Okay.
means. He would say, I set the emotional framework for the company, for all 2,500 people. That's what he would say.
Okay.
I would say that to an extent, but I think I'm much more of the emotional barometer for the company. And I know where he and I want to go. I know where we want to take this company. I know where we believe this place could go. I know that we believe in humans and we see possibility. So that's a big part of who we both are. Now, I started as an SVP and I was running our largest account at the time. Why? Well, I was the first agency person he had hired. I was one of the oldest people, so I had work and lived experience. And so I had already, in my lifetime, already hired and terminated people. I had had hard discussions. I had done all of that stuff. I had already been an informal mentor. Like I said, I'm always a coach for people, champion. And so as I started to get used to my role at Vayner, he had me doing other things. So on my year anniversary, which we call Vaynerversary, I went to him and I said, you know what, thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't want to do advertising anymore. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I only care about the people here. I care about the heartbeat. The heartbeat is the culture. That's that. And the culture is made up of these micro moments that individuals have day in, day out, minute by minute, minute by minute. And so he said, all right, I need you to do this job for 18 more months. And I really think I said, I'll give you 6 months. He doesn't remember that. But I did. I found my backfill and I closed everything down and I resigned. And he'll tell you that as I was resigning, because it was a 90-minute resignation,
Wow.
because we just kept on talking, he was already thinking, how can I bring her back? We did not have HR at the time. I never wanted to do HR. I wanted to be a psychotherapist. I was very, very clear on that. But I never wanted to touch HR. And 3 months later, he called me. We had breakfast. I sat down and he said, that's it. You're going to come back and you're going to be Chief Heart Officer. And I was like, great. That just fit like a glove. I knew exactly what that was. It's just who you are if you have a heart to help. And so we said 3 things there. I said, I don't want to do HR. And he said, well, you're going to learn HR and then you'll hire a strong team around you. So 10 years later, I have a great team. And I actually sit outside of HR. We call it people and experience. I said, what are we doing here? I was here for 16 months. What are we building? And he said, we're building the single greatest human-centric organization in the history of time. It's like, great, sign me up.
I love that.
And then, of course, I said, so how do we know if I'm successful? There's no job description. And he said the following: you will touch every single human being in the agency and infuse empathy throughout. And to this day, that's still the only job description I have. So big ask, really, scaling the unscalable. And, it's mine and others now to figure out how we are going to make sure that the people in Bangkok tomorrow are feeling this. The people in Toronto that I'm not talking to, the people in Mexico City, that is on my mind all the time.
That's amazing. And you mentioned you have 2,500 plus employees today,
Yeah.
and with a goal of touching every one of them and opening up the conversations. And how do you, because you talk about boundaries, which,
Hmm.
by the way, be yourself at work. Be yourself at work. So we're going to provide a link to where everyone can go and purchase a
Thank
copy of
you.
this book. It is so good. And I obviously we can't cover everything that's in this book because we want you to go and read it and experience it and absorb it and learn from it and apply the lessons that you learn. But you talk about the importance of boundaries. That's one of the things that you talk about in the book. How do you, so I'm going back to your thoughts around being a psychotherapist. And with 2,500 plus employees, you're having a lot of different types of conversations. And I can't even imagine, Claude, how challenging some of those conversations must be, because it's truly authenticity, right? It's talking about things that are going on in life and in business, right? But how do you, I don't want to use the word protect yourself, but how do
Yeah.
you establish certain boundaries so you're not taking all of that with you and having it become part of your own psyche? Just talk to me about that for a moment,
Yeah.
please.
How do I not get saturated or oversaturated with other people's emotions and feelings and stuff?
Yeah.
Very simply, when I was sharing with you in my 20s, I did a lot of studying with energy, clairvoyancy, chakra clearings, all of that, along with spirituality.
Okay.
And I learned about boundary setting, and I learned about energy and energy work. And I know now, fast forward many, many, many years, that in order for me to get up every morning and feel how I want to feel and go into work and operate and be with people, I need to make sure I know where I start and stop and where you start and stop. And I'm very clear on that. Nothing that we talk about is going to be about me. I'm going to do everything I can to move my ego to the back seat. I'm going to do everything I can to not be judgmental of what you share with me. What I do is it's spiritual for me. It's very, very spiritual. It's holy. I would never want to do anything that would jeopardize how you feel in the moment. People will only remember how you made them feel. Maya Angelou, it's on my wall right here. And so what I will do is I will create and hold space for you right here in the middle of where you end and I end. And I imagine a big paella pan or a big soup, cauldron. And what you talk about goes in there. And when you're done, and when we leave the conversation, I dump it out and it gets neutralized in the air. And that is how I do it. It is mind over matter. I have to be very prescriptive about it. There are days when I'm not. There are certain stories that someone might tell me that I'm not, and they really affect me. And I'm, whether or not I'm tender or saddened by them or delighted. But the most important thing is I can't do this work if I'm carrying you. I can't carry you. I can stand next to you and I can put my hand on your shoulder and say, you got this, Jay, and I got you. And that's my promise.
Are there conversations that you are not always in a place to show up for?
Sure. I mean, yeah, because I'm human. And so I need to make sure I'm right. Like I know my energy very well, and I know right about 3:30, which it is now, I start to dip because I start early. I have two young kids, and I squeeze that orange as hard as I can. And come about 3:30, I know the next couple hours have to be very easy meetings for me. And so if I have a hard conversation or if I have to do an exit or something, I really try to do that in the mornings around noon because my energy is dipping and I never want that to come out on you. It's mine. I'm aware of it.
So I heard exactly what you said. I feel you on that. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that we are at about the 3:30 hour and what that may do to you. So I want to be respectful of your energy and respectful of your time. So as we are wrapping up our conversation, Claude, and I do know that I could certainly have a conversation with you for hours, as I'm sure many, many people can who come in contact with you. Would you share maybe one piece of insight for leaders who are going to go and buy a copy of this book? What are you hoping that they're going to take away from this that is going to be meaningful and impactful for them?
That's a great question. So the book takes you on a journey of self. Who are you? Self-awareness. What is the cost of you not showing up every day? Starts there and then walks you through how to show up, right? How to find your authenticity. It goes then into teams, you on a team and what you're bringing to the team, conflict resolution, team citizenship, all of those things, resilience. And then it takes you as a leader, cultivating a culture, co-cultivating a culture, leading teams. That's the first thing. So the book is for anyone. For leaders, I think it is a phenomenal reminder of things that we have forgotten because we've been in leadership positions now for 20 years, 10 years, whatever. So we need to remember what it was like, and we need to remember certain tenets and certain skills, like how to listen, how to really, really hold space for someone, how to put your ego in the back seat, how to acknowledge people, how to make sure you are walking into a room and you are the person they need, that your phone's not stuck in your face. And then this is a phenomenal book for teams. That is what I will say. So why? Because you want your teams all studying the same thing and playing from the same song sheet. And there's a ton of exercises, fun exercises in here that you can do with teams, with others. And so what I want leaders to know is that no matter where we are, it's all good. And we owe it to ourselves to sharpen our skills. We owe it to ourselves to take 5 and just to say like, have I appreciated myself today? Right? And then have I appreciated anyone else today?
I love that. That's so good. So, Claude, two quick things here as we are wrapping up. First, as we're having this conversation and listening to your stories, are you proud of yourself today?
I'm happy with myself. I'm happy with myself.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am proud of myself. Just like on Outward Bound, I finished something very, very hard. I finished this book, and it was very challenging to keep going. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good. I wanted to hear you say that.
I am proud of myself.
Thank you for that. And then my final question to you is this, and it's if you had the opportunity to sit on a park bench, you're outdoors in nature, and you could sit next to any one person who's either currently living or no longer with us, and you could ask that person one question and one question only. First, who is it that you would want to have the conversation with? And then number 2, what is one question that you would want to ask that person?
It's my Nana. And my Nana died at 101. I dedicate the book to her. She was my best friend. She's my person. And I would give anything to have some time back with her. And what I would ask her is, how did she find that well of generosity inside of her? With all the things she went through in life, all the things that she had seen, how could she possibly still every day put a smile on someone's face? How could she possibly every day say the following: would you do me a favor and have a peaceful day?
Wow. Oh, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And Claude, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I appreciate your candor, your authenticity, telling part of your story, and sharing so much of yourself with all of us. I know I've learned a lot from you. I'm learning so much from Be Yourself at Work. And thank you. I just want you to know I'm grateful for you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. And for all of you, I want to thank you so very much for watching and for listening. I do have a super quick favor. Would you please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? That helps this podcast continue to grow and expand its reach. And to enjoy more episodes, my friends, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Keep doing the work to reach your potential, and make sure that you run out and buy a copy of Be Yourself at Work. And again, don't only read it, apply the lessons you learn, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.